As the imposter son destined for a tragic end, I was despised by everyone. My family and classmates turned on me, subjecting me to endless ridicule and humiliation. They never knew that the celebrated true heir was just playing the victim, using the script of our lives to frame me again and again. I had already foreseen my grim fate, so I played along, delivered a crippling blow, left behind a fortune, and vanished, all while secretly plotting to bring down their entire dynasty with the power of capital. The story had already reached its climax the moment the true heir appeared at our door. My parents were on guard, convinced I would try to steal the family fortune. My sister called me shameless, and even the man who'd been my fiancé since we were kids broke our engagement without a second thought. The Ashford family threw me out, leaving me to wander the streets of New York, hoping I'd just disappear and die in some forgotten alley. They could never have imagined that I had already carved out a place for myself in their world. I'd already packed my belongings. My parents and my sister, Olivia, were lined up at the door to greet him. The moment I saw Ethan, I knew he was their real son. His features were a perfect mirror of my mother's. Mr. Ashford gave him a once-over, nodded, and clapped him on the shoulder. "It's good to have you back," he said. "You've been through a lot." Mrs. Ashford's eyes instantly welled with tears as she threw her arms around Ethan. Olivia joined in, and the three of them clung to each other, sobbing uncontrollably. Ethan, however, remained expressionless in their embrace, his eyes lifting over their shoulders to find me standing in the corner. The instant our eyes met, the coldness in his gaze vanished, replaced by a flood of tears. Yet, through the tears, a triumphant smile played on his lips. I cleared my throat softly, and only then did the others seem to remember I was even there. The joy on their faces froze, then curdled. They had no intention of introducing me, eager only to usher Ethan inside. But Ethan himself paused as he walked past me. "Who's he?" he asked, looking up. Mrs. Ashford shot me a quick, uneasy glance. "This is James," she said, her voice strained. I expected Ethan to just walk on by, pretending I didn't exist, but he surprised me. He took a deep, shaky breath, his voice laced with a tragic resolve. "So, he's the one who took my place, isn't he? All those years I was alone in an orphanage, without parents. You had another son here with you the whole time." At that, Mrs. Ashford broke down completely. Stroking Ethan's arm, she sobbed, "Ethan, it's all my fault. I'm the one who lost you. From this day on, you are my only son." Mr. Ashford looked on, moved, but then he shot a venomous glare in my direction, his eyes filled with disgust. He turned back to Ethan. "Don't worry, son. You have Ashford blood. No one can take what is rightfully yours." Before I could say a word, I had been branded a usurper. And just like that, the dream I had as a child was becoming my reality, one detail at a time. This world was a stage, built for a hero's revenge and triumphant return. And Ethan was, without a doubt, the hero of this story. He grew up in an orphanage with nothing, yet he possessed an ambition that dwarfed that of his peers. The Ashfords brought him home, and overnight he went from a penniless nobody to a dynasty's heir. Ultimately, he would rise to the very top, marrying a stunningly beautiful woman from an equally powerful family. And me? I was cast as the disposable side character, the one designed to be crushed under the hero's heel. In the story, after he systematically stripped me of everything I'd ever known, I was supposed to become consumed by jealousy, fighting him at every turn in a futile attempt to reclaim my life. Naturally, it was all scripted to end in tragedy for me. I was thrown out by the Ashfords, left homeless, and to tie up loose ends, they would even hire someone to have me killed in a dark alley. It was the ultimate cliché, a perfect dramatization of the idea that you should never underestimate the underdog. I would wake from that dream drenched in a cold sweat, my hand instinctively flying to my stomach, as if I could still feel the phantom pain of a blade. Lost in that daze, I heard Olivia's voice drift toward me. "He's lived someone else's life for 18 years, she said. "You'd think he'd have the decency to be ashamed. Mom and Dad are just too soft. Ethan, don't even waste your time on him." I stood there, frozen. This was the same sister who, just yesterday, had been all smiles and sweetness, the sister I'd spoiled for her entire life. Now, she looked at me with nothing but contempt. I didn't say a word. I just turned and went back to my room. My eyes fell on the dates circled in red on my calendar, and I began to count down the days until my departure. Mr. and Mrs. Ashford were efficient. They quickly enrolled Ethan in my elite prep school, Northwood High. To fast-track his entry into the school's inner circle, they even placed him in my homeroom. By his second day, the rumor that I was the imposter son was already all over campus. The kids at Northwood are sharp, and the social hierarchy there is as complex and ruthless as any in the adult world. It wasn't long before the whispers and snide remarks started. At first, they tried to be subtle, murmuring just loud enough for me to overhear. James really knows how to put on an act, one would say. With the way he acted so superior, I actually believed he was a real Ashford. He's just a fake. I can't believe he has the nerve to still be living there. It's pathetic. The rumors grew uglier. They started to openly ostracize me, isolating me completely. Whenever I walked down the hall, someone would make a show of pinching their nose as if I stank. Even Chloe, my fiancée, who had been attached to my hip since we were kids, cut ties with me instantly. "I'm marrying the Ashford heir," she declared, "not some nobody from off the street." Then she immediately pivoted, fawning over Ethan and calling him by his first name with a syrupy sweetness. I was just relieved to have some peace and quiet, so I threw myself into studying for the SATs. But the day before the exams, a group of guys from the varsity football team cornered me and dragged me into the boys' bathroom. I didn't say a thing as they pushed me along. I knew exactly who was behind this. It was Ethan. Given our situation, there was no way we could ever coexist peacefully. The bathroom was dim and damp and completely empty. The guys circled me, their eyes gleaming with a cruel excitement. I, however, remained calm. "Aren't you worried someone will walk in?" I asked. "Who's even here this late?" The one closest to me sneered. "Leo made sure the security cameras in this wing are off, just for you." Another guy wedged the door shut with a mop handle, rolling up his sleeves with a grin. "Besides, you're just the Ashford stray dog. Who's going to care what happens to you? In that case, I won't hold back." Before they could even process my words, I swung, my fist connecting hard with the first guy's face. He stumbled backward, dazed, blood pouring from his nose and over his hand. Another one charged. I sidestepped his clumsy lunge and drove my foot into his groin. He collapsed to the floor, clutching himself and writhing in agony, a sheen of cold sweat on his forehead. "James, you actually hit me," he gasped. I calmly brushed off my sleeves and let out a small laugh. Why wouldn't I? There are no cameras. The one with the bloody nose watched his friend gasping on the floor, a visible chill running through him. When I turned my gaze to him, he flinched and dropped into a crouch, covering his head and shaking. "You're not scared we'll go to the principal?" he stammered. A contemptuous smile touched my lips. "And who do you think they'll believe? The straight, a student who's never been in trouble, or a pack of delinquents with a history?" I left them there and walked out without a backward glance. As I stepped into the hall, a girl walked out of the women's restroom. Her beauty was so striking it made me stop for a second. She shot a knowing look toward the men's room. Then her eyes lingered on me for a beat before she turned and walked away without a word. I knew who she was. Ava Sterling, the undisputed queen of Northwood High. We'd been voted campus royalty once, our photos side by side on the school's social media page for a week. We were both untouchable in our own ways, distant and out of reach. When I got home, I found Mrs. Ashford fussing over Ethan. "How are you settling in at school, dear?" she cooed. "If you need anything at all, you just have to tell me. Don't keep it bottled up. And don't stress about your exams. Your scores don't matter. You'll be taking over the company one day, regardless." Ethan was about to smile back at her when he looked up and saw me walking into the living room, perfectly fine. The smile froze on his face, plastered there unnaturally as if he'd been paused. "What is it? Are you hurt? Did someone bother you?" Mrs. Ashford rushed to his side, her hands fluttering over him as she checked for injuries. But Ethan gently stopped her. "No one would dare touch me. And if they did, James would protect me, right? He looked at me. Only then did Mrs. Ashford seem to remember I existed. She turned to me, her brow furrowed. Why are you so late? You should have been with Ethan. What if something had happened to him? Ethan patted her hand reassuringly. It's fine, Mom, really. No one would mess with me. James is a big deal at school. People know not to cross him. It was laughable. I was the one who got dragged into a bathroom for a beating, and here was the mastermind behind it, getting all the sympathy. After hearing Ethan's performance, Mrs. Ashford scoffed. His reputation only exists because we paid for it. Without us, he'd be nothing. Then, as if worried she'd hurt Ethan's feelings, she quickly added, You're the true Ashford heir. Your name will mean far more at that school than his ever did. And with that, she dismissed every single thing I had worked for and achieved on my own. I had no interest in watching their touching family drama. I turned and headed upstairs without a word. But Ethan followed me to the landing. How did you manage that? He called out. I stopped and looked back at him, a small smile on my face as I finished his question for him. You're wondering why I'm not covered in bruises, right? He said nothing, which was all the confirmation I needed. I gave him a pleasant smile. Ethan, did you really think I spent the last 18 years just sitting around doing nothing? A man needs to know how to handle himself. Unlike Ethan, who is lean and wiry, I've been training my whole life. I was raised to be the Ashford heir, which meant years of athletics and martial arts. Knowing how to fight wasn't just a hobby. I ignored his hateful stare and was about to leave, but then he spoke, his voice low. Who do you think they care about more, James? You or me? I didn't answer, but the sly, knowing smile on his face told me something was coming. What do you think they'd do, he continued, if they found out you pushed me down the stairs because you were afraid I'd take the inheritance? That you injured my hand and made me miss my final exams. The words were barely out of his mouth before he threw himself backward, tumbling dramatically down the entire flight of stairs. I could have easily reached out and caught him. Instead, I just stood there and watched him fall. The house exploded into chaos. There was screaming, someone called 911, and a flurry of hands eventually got Ethan onto a stretcher and into an ambulance. As I watched it all unfold, a strange calm settled over me. For a fleeting moment, I might have even smiled. I suddenly realized this vengeful part of me was perfectly suited for the role I'd been given. If Ethan wanted to put on a show, I would see his performance through to the very end. The day the SATs ended, the Ashfords still hadn't returned from the hospital. I had already arranged for a moving truck, and I loaded my pack bags one by one. On the living room coffee table, I left a letter. In it, I expressed my sincere gratitude to the Ashford family for raising me for 18 years. I explained that I was now an adult, fully capable of supporting myself. With their true heir home, there was no longer a place for me. I wished them a happy family reunion and urged them to give Ethan all the love he had missed out on. For dramatic effect, I added a few drops of saline to the paper, blurring the ink to simulate tears of heartfelt sorrow. I also left a debit card. On it was a wire transfer for the full amount the Ashfords had spent raising me for 18 years, which I calculated to be $8 million. I threw in an extra $2 million, just to round it up to a neat 10. When it was all done, I took one last look at the house I had lived in for my entire life. I didn't hesitate. I walked out and didn't look back. I heard later that Ethan was furious for a long time. He had only planned to fake a minor injury to get out of the exams, but his little stunt had resulted in a seriously broken right hand. The Ashfords, for their part, had no intention of letting me go. They put out feelers, trying to track me down, terrified I might resurface to demand money or threaten Ethan's position. At the same time, they were quietly making plans to have me permanently eliminated. They had no idea I had already paved my own way forward. Dead or alive, I was a ghost. The next time I saw Ethan was years later at a charity auction. The scrawny, awkward boy I remembered had transformed into a man who carried himself with an air of elegant authority. His right hand was still a little stiff, a slight awkwardness in his movements, but it did nothing to diminish the sharp, predatory energy he exuded. A crowd of sycophants orbited him, all vying for his attention. I stood on the periphery, quietly taking all in. It didn't take long for him to spot me. He made his way through the crowd, a mocking smirk playing on his lips. "James," he said, "it's been a while." I gave a slight, polite nod in return. "You've done a good job of hiding." For a while there, I was worried the victim would never find his attacker. His voice carried, and a ripple of shocked gasps went through the nearby guests. Ethan was clearly savoring the attention. He raised his voice, ensuring everyone could hear. He pushed me down a flight of stairs, all because he was afraid I'd take the inheritance that was rightfully mine. I was lucky to survive. This was an exclusive event filled with the city's elite, and most of them had heard the rumors about the Ashfords having 2 sons. Now, thanks to Ethan's little speech, they were all piecing together their own version of why only one remained. Their gazes turned on me, filled with open contempt. I let out a short, sharp laugh. "Are you out of your mind, or do you just think I'm stupid?" It was a single flight of stairs, not a 20-story drop. I could fall down those stairs a dozen times and not get more than a scratch. Only you could manage to cripple yourself like that. And let's not forget, you threw yourself down them. And now you want to pin it on me? I paused, looking him up and down with an exaggeratedly critical air. "Instead of playing the victim, maybe you should try hitting the gym. You're built like a stiff breeze could knock you over. Is it my fault you're so fragile?" Ethan's face flushed with anger. Someone nearby jumped to his defense. "Ethan grew up in an orphanage. Of course he's not as strong. And you're mocking him for it? You think being a bully gives you the right to the Ashford fortune? If the Ashfords hadn't taken you in, you wouldn't even be in this room." I just smiled coldly. "Why don't you ask your dear Ethan if I happen to leave a little something behind when I left? $10 million, to be exact. I paid back every cent I owed the Ashfords, and then some. As for who's after their money now," I shrugged. "It's not me. If I had really been after the money, would I have just walked away? Would I have given you all this time to spread your lies?" I didn't bother explaining further. I just found an empty seat in the back and sat down. Chloe scoffed loudly. "I wonder whose invitation he stole to get in here. People like him belong in the shadows." With that, she took Ethan's arm, and with her chin held high, they paraded to their seats in the front row. At an auction of this caliber, the first few lots are just warm-ups. I watched the bidding with mild boredom, using the time to size up the key players in the room, assessing their backgrounds and financial power. Someone like Chloe, for instance, had no real power of her own. She was a social climber, leveraging her engagement to stay relevant by latching onto wealthier families. She bid on nearly every piece of jewelry that came up, whether it was worth the price or not. Then there were people like Ava Sterling. She only bid on pieces with real, intrinsic value, and when she did, she always won them at the perfect price. I noticed her the moment I walked in. She was exactly as I remembered her, exuding a cool, detached confidence. She sat alone in a corner, reviewing documents on her laptop. As the auction drew to a close, the final item was presented, a necklace known as the Heart of Summer. A buzz of excitement filled the room. The flawless diamonds alone were worth a fortune, to say nothing of the magnificent central jade, surrounded by over 100 smaller, perfect emeralds. The piece was rumored to be a custom design from a world-renowned, anonymous designer, handcrafted by master jewelers over thousands of hours. The identity of the designer was the art world's best-kept secret. The moment the Heart of Summer was unveiled, the bidding started fast and furious. Chloe was practically vibrating with excitement, tugging on Ethan's arm and urging him to raise his paddle again and again. Ethan, determined to win it for her, obliged. To help things along, I threw in a few bids of my own just to drive up the price. And then, Ava made her move. She stated her price, and the room went quiet. Paddles were lowered. It was only then that Ethan and Chloe seemed to notice Ava sitting quietly in her corner. Chloe's face fell, and she clutched at Ethan's arm, putting on a show of being delicate and wronged. Ethan, however, just shot Ava a complex look, a strange smile playing on his lips as he called out a higher number. Ava didn't counter. The necklace went to Ethan. Chloe shot a triumphant, smug look at Ava, her expression a clear declaration of victory. After the auction, all the winning bidders headed backstage, to finalize their purchases. I went as well, and saw Ethan intercepting Ava on her way out. "I heard you were interested in the heart of summer," he said with feigned nonchalance. "Would you like a seat up close?" Chloe was visibly annoyed and tugged at his sleeve, but he brushed her off. Ava's expression was unreadable. "There's no need," she said coolly. "If it wasn't meant to be, it wasn't meant to be." She turned to leave, but I cut in. "We're all here anyway. Might as well have a look. I heard there's a matching bracelet that wasn't part of the auction," I added. "Maybe you can acquire the set." Ethan scowled at me, his voice sharp with irritation. "James, have you forgotten who you are? You're not an Ashford anymore. I've never heard of any matching bracelet. Where did you get that information?" But Ava didn't call my bluff. She just smiled. "It's better to be safe than sorry. And it's on the way. A quick look won't hurt." With that, she led the way to the private viewing area. Ethan shot me one last venomous look before following her inside. When I entered the room, Ethan was already holding the heart of summer. Chloe was gazing at him, her eyes shining with anticipation. But then Ethan turned and offered the necklace directly to Ava. "Miss Sterling," he said smoothly, "would you like to try it on? A man like myself has no use for it. If you like it, it's yours." Ava was visibly taken aback, clearly not expecting him to offer her the necklace right in front of his fiancée. He was treating Chloe as if she wasn't even there. I caught the eye of an attendant and gave a subtle nod. Then I turned to Ethan. "Since Mr. Ashford is being so generous," I said slowly, "it seems a shame to only give half a gift. A complete set is the only thing that truly befits the Ashford name." As I spoke, the attendant presented a velvet box. Inside was the matching bracelet. It was crafted with the same emeralds and jade, with the same exquisite detail as the necklace. I knew at a glance it was just as valuable. The consignor was very specific, the attendant added smoothly. The pieces were designed as a set and are not to be sold separately. If Mr. Ashford wishes to purchase it, he must purchase both. Why wasn't this mentioned during the auction? Ethan's voice was tight, his hand clenching around the necklace. "Are you trying to pressure me into a sale?" In the original script of this world, the Ashford Corporation was already teetering on the edge of bankruptcy at this point. If my memory of the timeline was correct, this auction was supposed to be their turning point. Ethan's plan was to gift the necklace to Ava, using it as an in with the powerful Sterling family. He would leverage their massive cash flow to bail out his own company, and then, under the guise of partnership, he would slowly dismantle their empire from within, ultimately making himself the most powerful man in the city. Ethan's reaction confirmed my theory. Given the Ashfords' current finances, buying the necklace was already a massive gamble. Being forced to buy the bracelet too would be financial suicide. "If Mr. Ashford is unable to complete the purchase," the attendant said politely, "the lot can be returned." But backing out now, after such a public bidding war, would be a declaration to everyone in the room that the great Ashford family was broke. His only other option was to liquidate every last asset he had to buy the set, but he wouldn't dare. A man who clawed his way up from nothing always keeps an ace in the hole. He couldn't risk going all in. As all eyes in the room fixed on him, waiting for his decision, Ethan finally hesitated. It was Ava who stepped in to save him. "Mr. Ashford," she said smoothly, "I'm a great admirer of this designer's work. Perhaps we can find a solution. I will be happy to purchase the bracelet myself. As for the necklace, I will pay the amount of my final bid. Mr. Ashford can simply cover the difference." "The only reason I stopped bidding is because I felt the price was becoming inflated," she explained. "So, if you're willing to part with it, my original offer still stands." It was a perfect out. Ethan had no choice but to agree. "That won't be necessary," I said, cutting in. "If you truly like it, Miss Sterling, please allow me to gift you the bracelet." Ethan shot me a contemptuous look. "James, who do you think you are? You should think before you open your mouth. You probably don't have $1,000 to your name, let alone enough for that. And you're talking about gifting a multi-million-dollar piece of jewelry." I ignored him, picked up the bracelet, and gently fastened it around Ava's wrist. "It's perfect," I said with a smile. "It complements your style. If you like it, I could design some other pieces to go with it. Free of charge, of course." Ava looked at me, her eyes wide with a surprise she couldn't quite conceal. Ethan's face was thunderous. He could not believe that the piece he had nearly bankrupted himself for was my creation. James, this is a setup. You conspired with the auction house. The Heart of Summer is by a famous anonymous designer. What does it have to do with you? I just raised an eyebrow. I designed the entire collection during my time in Europe. If you don't believe me, I said calmly, check the back of the center stone. You'll find the initials J engraved there. Ethan snatched the necklace from the attendant and flipped it over. When he saw the small, elegant initials, his eyes widened in shock. The initials were there, just as I'd said. He stood frozen, completely stunned. Did you ever wonder, I asked him, why the Ashfords could never find a trace of me? Impossible étant muteur. Where did you get the money to leave the country? You gave all of it back to us. I took a step closer, a smirk on my face. Mr. Ashford, as I told you before, I wasn't exactly idle during my 18 years in your home. Ethan glared at me. James, you'll regret crossing me. Just you wait. He grabbed the still-stunned Chloe by the arm and stormed out of the room. Ava picked up the necklace from the table, a slow, alluring smile spreading across her face. Well then, Mr. James, the designer, would you do me the honor of putting it on for me? I was more than happy to oblige. As I fastened the clasp, she raised her wrist. And this bracelet you've gifted me, she said, her voice soft. I assume it comes with strings attached. I met her eyes in the reflection, a slow smile forming on my face. You're as smart as they say, Miss Sterling. She dropped the formality. So, James, what's the game? It's simple, I replied. I want you to help me corner him. We're going to cut off every single one of Ethan's escape routes, from financing to marriage. I laid out the entire story for her, the past and the predetermined future. She didn't show a flicker of surprise, her composure absolute, as if she'd known it all along. Then we should get married, she said, her voice perfectly even. We're destined to be players in the same game. Anyway, she continued, we might as well enter as partners. I was momentarily speechless. I never expected her to be so direct. She smiled. What about you? I've been awake for some time myself. But a corporation the size of Ashford Industries isn't something you can take down with a frontal assault. She looked at me, her gaze steady and sure. And if my research is correct, Panda Capital belongs to you, doesn't it? Panda Capital. It was one of the biggest venture capital firms in the city, with a stake in nearly every major player. Their deals started in the 9-figure range, and they managed portfolios for clients worth tens of billions. While my name wasn't on the paperwork, I was the one who had built the entire firm from the ground up for behind the scenes. Ever since that dream, I had used the Ashford family's resources to teach myself everything about finance, market analysis, and networking. All of it, of course, was done under a series of aliases. My entire strategy depended on absolute anonymity. In fact, Panda Capital's foundation was built years ago when I secretly managed a massive financing deal for Ashford Industries itself. I secured them over $1 billion in funding, and in the process, my shell corporation acquired a 7% stake in their company. That deal put Panda on the map. I thought my tracks were perfectly covered. The Ashfords certainly never found a thing. But with a single sentence, Ava had seen right through it all. The Sterling family has worked with Panda before, she said. My father started bringing me to those meetings when I was a kid. Do you remember that day at school? In the bathroom. I frowned, replaying the memory in my head. And then it hit me. When you were putting your things away, she continued, your sketchbook fell open. I saw the design for the Panda Capital logo. She was right. Finance was just the foundation. My real passion was design. That logo was the first piece I ever created. Then I'll be direct, I said, pulling a prepared contract from my briefcase and sliding across to her. I have no intention of taking advantage of you. This is a partnership agreement to protect both our interests during our marriage. We live separate lives, no interference, as long as there's no public scandal. The contract is valid until the day Ashford Industries collapses. Ava studied me for a moment. Then a brilliant smile lit up her face. A pleasure doing business with you, James. The moment our engagement was announced, the internet exploded. Just as I predicted, they call me a gold digger, claiming I was only marrying her to get my hands on the Sterling fortune. As the sole Sterling heir, it was assumed that I would eventually control the family empire. The old rumors resurfaced, too, that I had pushed Ethan down the stairs to steal the Ashford inheritance, and now I was making a play for the Sterlings. I knew exactly who was fueling the fire, Ethan and Chloe. But it wasn't time to strike back yet. The first step was complete. I had already severed Ethan's access to the Sterling family's capital. This forced him to seek funding elsewhere, to host a gala, and find some other wealthy fool to bankroll his failing company. And the firm he hired to manage this new round of financing was, of course, Panda Capital. Ethan was pitching a new, revolutionary AI venture, a complete fabrication to hide the dire reality of the Ashfords' finances. Even Chloe was in the dark. But when you start talking numbers, the truth has a way of coming out. Questions would be asked. If the company was expanding, why the need for outside capital? Why was the funding target so high? And why did they need it all in one lump sum? And what was their contingency plan if the project failed? I knew Ethan was running out of time. Ava and I exchanged a look. The Sterling Group is prepared to offer an initial investment of $5 billion, she announced, in exchange for a 30% stake in Ashford Industries. The potential of AI was enormous, but so were the risks. And with Ashford Industries currently valued at just over $10 billion, offering nearly half their valuation for less than a third of the company was a terrible deal by any metric. Ethan seemed to sense something was off, but he was desperate. He gritted his teeth and agreed. This was a lifeline. With the Sterling family's name attached, other investors would be lining up to get in on the deal. The tension in the room eased, and Ethan visibly relaxed. That's when Ava twisted the knife. "Mr. Ashford," she began, "the Sterling Group has always had faith in your company's potential. However, as you yourself have noted, this is a new and untested field. And since Ashford Industries is not a tech company by origin, the risk is substantial. Therefore, in addition to the 30% equity, we will require a VM clause." The terms were simple. An additional 14% of the company's shares would be held in escrow. If Ethan's AI project failed to meet specific, predetermined performance benchmarks, ownership of those shares would transfer to the Sterling Group. The color drained from Ethan's face. If the project failed, the Sterlings would control 44% of his company, making them the second largest shareholder. The risk was enormous. But he had no choice. His company was on the verge of collapse. He would never have gone public with this if he wasn't desperate. He clenched his jaw. Agreed. After the papers were signed, Ethan was a different man, visibly relieved. At the celebration party that followed, he made a point of approaching Ava and me, glass in hand. "I wanted to thank you both for your support today. I'll be sure to thank you more formally soon. But for now, could I have a private word with James?" Ava simply nodded and excused herself. As I watched her walk away, a strange sense of unease washed over me. Ethan stepped forward, blocking my view of her, a cryptic smile on his face. "You're full of surprises, aren't you, James?" Walked away from the Ashfords just to latch onto the Sterlings. I didn't reply, just took a sip of my drink. "You don't really think she's going to marry you, do you?" He straightened his posture, adjusting the collar of his suit with an air of superiority. "You know, James, sometimes I almost feel sorry for you people. You're all just characters in a story, completely unaware. You can struggle all you want, but you can never escape the plot." He looked down at me, his eyes filled with condescension. "But I'm different. I'm the one who knows it's a story. In this world, I'm the main character," he declared. "I'm destined to be at the top. And a woman like Ava deserves a man who's worthy of her. A man like me." The feeling of dread intensified. I scanned the crowd for Ava, but she was nowhere to be seen. I turned to confront Ethan, but a sharp, sudden pain exploded at the back of my skull, and everything went black. When I came to, I was in a hotel room. Ava was lying on the bed, her face flushed and her breathing ragged. It was obvious she'd been drugged. I understood immediately. I tried to move, but my hands and feet were bound tight. The bathroom door opened, and Ethan stepped out, wearing a hotel bathrobe. He looked at me, tied up and helpless, and his eyes shone with a sick excitement. I struggled against my restraints, but it was useless. You love getting in my way, don't you? He sneered. Today, you're going to watch me win. I'm telling you, the only man in Ava's future is me. But as he moved toward her, the hotel room door burst open. Police officers swarmed in, tackling him and pinning him to the bed before he could even react. His arrogance shattered, his face contorting in a mask of pure rage. James, you did this. You think you can walk away from this? The Ashfords will destroy you. If I go down, I'm taking you with me. I ignored his screaming, thanked the officers, and carefully lifted Ava into my arms to take her to the hospital. As I passed him, I leaned in close to his ear. It doesn't matter, I said, my voice low and clear. After all, I'm just a disposable side character. At the most critical moment of Ashford Industries' fundraising efforts, its CEO was arrested in a sexual assault scandal. Simultaneously, a prominent venture capital firm released a devastating internal audit of the company, sending shockwaves through the city. The report came from Panda Capital, a longtime partner that held a 7% stake in Ashford Industries. It was a brutal, unflinching exposé of the company's reality: plummeting revenue, non-existent cash flow, and a culture rife with corruption. A firm with Panda Capital's reputation would never release a fraudulent report that would devalue its own holdings. The report was undeniably true. Within hours, the Ashford Industries headquarters was besieged by angry investors. At the same time, the Sterling Group, the project's lead investor, released its own statement. Their due diligence had revealed that Ethan had not invested the capital into RD as promised. Instead, he had embezzled the funds to cover Ashford Industries' operational costs, with a substantial amount funneled directly into his family's personal accounts. Citing gross investor fraud, the Sterling Group officially filed a lawsuit against Ashford Industries. The next time I saw Mr. and Mrs. Ashford, it was in Ava's office. They had spent the last few years cleaning up Ethan's messes, but now, with the company imploding and their son in jail, they were completely overwhelmed. The company's stock was now worthless. If the lawsuit went to trial and all their dirty laundry was aired in public, the consequences would be catastrophic. They had come begging Ava to drop the lawsuit, to agree to a settlement. But the moment they saw me sitting in her office, they froze. And in that instant, they understood. This was all our doing. James, the Ashford family raised you for 18 years, Mr. Ashford said, his voice trembling. Is this how you repay our kindness? A small, humorless smile touched my lips. Repay you? You mean like the multiple attempts on my life after I left? Was that part of your kindness too? If I hadn't been prepared, I'd be a corpse in some unmarked grave right now. Mr. Ashford tried to maintain his facade of the wounded father, but Mrs. Ashford couldn't contain her rage. You're a monster, she shrieked. You've been plotting against Ethan from the moment he came home. You bullied him at school. You had your friends beat him up. You pushed him down the stairs that night because you were terrified he would tell us the truth. You are a vicious, evil boy. We should have gotten rid of you when we had the chance. I narrowed my eyes, my voice dropping to an icy calm. Did Ethan tell you all this himself? Of course not, she snapped. Ethan is too good and kind to hold a grudge. It was Chloe. She couldn't bear to see him suffer after you broke his hand, so she told us everything. If it wasn't for her, we never would have known what a despicable person you are. I actually laughed. I always knew Ethan was a master of playing the victim, but I'd underestimated his ability to weaponize others. If what he told me was true, that he knew this was all a story, then of course he wanted me dead. I was the one variable he couldn't control. He knew the script, and he knew my reaction to his arrival was not what was supposed to happen. So he tried to use his knowledge of the plot to eliminate me. What he didn't know was that my own knowledge of this world ran far deeper than his. Since you're so convinced I'm a villain, I said, pulling Ava close, then you won't be surprised by what comes next. Getting my fiancée to drop her lawsuit is actually very simple. You will sign over your entire stake in Ashford Industries to us. You will take Olivia and leave New York, and you will swear to never return and to never have any contact with Ethan again. Mr. Ashford's composure finally shattered. "You can't do this," he snarled. "Even with the Sterling's 44%, we are still the majority shareholders. You have no right." "Mr. Ashford, this isn't a negotiation," I said calmly. "This is me offering you a way out. Consider it a final gesture of gratitude for the 18 years you raised me. That's the only reason I'm letting you walk away from this at all." I slid a document across the desk. It was proof of Panda Capital's holdings. Panda Capital owns 7% of the company, I explained. Combined with the Sterling Group's 44%, that gives us a 51% controlling interest. The moment you sign, you lose control. I'm prepared to offer you a generous severance, enough to live comfortably somewhere far away from you. But if you refuse, I will not only destroy your company, I will erase the Ashford name from the city forever. In the end, they folded. In their world, money and power were the only things that mattered. Family, loyalty, truth, they had discarded those things long ago. If they hadn't, they never would have thrown me away based on the lies of a stranger. The day the Sterling Group officially finalized its acquisition of Ashford Industries, I went to see Ava. I had brokered the entire deal. The Sterlings now had a new flagship company, and Panda Capital's shares had skyrocketed in value. As for Ethan, with charges ranging from attempted sexual assault to embezzlement and corporate fraud, he would be spending the rest of his life in prison. Our objective was complete. The terms of our contract were fulfilled. I had no intention of holding her to our arrangement anymore. But things didn't go according to my plan. "James," she said before I could speak, "I want to make a significant investment in Panda Capital." I was holding the contract we had signed. My hand slipped, tearing a small rip in the paper. The sound pulled me back to the present. I looked down at the tear. "My apologies," I said, placing the contract on the table. I looked at her, confused. "May I ask why?" "The Sterling Group has its own investment partners." She seemed to have anticipated my question. She walked closer, holding out her hand. On her wrist was the bracelet, the very piece I had used to draw her into this game in the first place. "Panda is performing exceptionally well," she said. "I reviewed your business plan. It's solid. But don't you think," she added, her eyes meeting mine, "that you're aiming a little low? And if I'm not mistaken, your real passion is design, isn't it? Panda Capital is just your safety net, the fallback you created so you'd always have a place to land." She said it calmly, but her words cut straight to the heart of the matter. I was silent, the air in the room suddenly thick. I forced a lighter tone. "Are you trying to hire me as your personal jeweler?" She smiled, a soft, gentle expression, but her voice was resonant. "No," she said. "I want to be your safety net. You don't love finance," she stated simply, "but I do. I want to help you build Panda into an empire, so that you'll be free to do what you truly love." "Why?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Because," she said, her gaze unwavering, "I want you. We were alike, her and I. Even back in school, we had both kept our distance from everyone else. For me, it was a defense mechanism, a way to stay invisible. For her, it was simply because she never needed anyone's approval. In the story that was supposed to be, we were both just supporting characters. I was the whetstone meant to sharpen Ethan's ambition. She was the stepping stone for his ascent to power. But luckily for us, we both woke up. And because we were awake, I knew what I truly wanted. I couldn't accept her generous offer. From that moment, I understood with perfect clarity that I could never rely on anyone else to make me safe. I had to be my own. Even in a world that might be entirely fictional, from my own point of view, no one is born to be beside you. In the story of your own life, you're always the hero. When the world casts you as a supporting character, how do you become the hero of your own story? The answer isn't to fight the script you've been given, but to achieve success through clear-eyed self-reliance. Because your only true safety net is yourself. It's time to put down their script and write your own.